In a village nestled among towering trees and whispered secrets, where narrow cobbled streets curved like threads in an ancient tapestry, there lived a woman known only as the Veiled Lady. No one could say when she had first arrived. Some claimed she had always been there, a figure drifting at the edge of memory, as old as the roots of the forest itself. Others insisted she had appeared one winter's night when the snow fell in silence and the bells of the chapel rang without a hand to move them. Her presence was like a shadow that had learned how to breathe. She moved through the village rarely and without sound, her long gown brushing the stones like a sigh. Her face was forever hidden beneath a veil of midnight silk that shimmered faintly in the light, as though tiny stars had been caught in its threads. The villagers lowered their voices when she passed. Children stopped their games and watched with wide, wondering eyes. Dogs did not bark at her, and the birds did not scatter when she walked beneath their branches. Rumors followed her like wind through leaves. Some said she was a sorceress whose power was woven from the fabric of dreams, a being who walked between the waking world and the realm that lived behind closed eyes. It was whispered that she could step into a person's thoughts and see the shape of their fears, that she spoke with shadows and knew the names of forgotten gods. Others claimed she was a lost princess, the last remnant of a fallen kingdom swallowed by darkness and time. According to this tale, she had fled across mountains and through enchanted forests, carrying with her a secret so heavy that it had bent her life into silence. They said her veil was not worn to hide her face from others, but to protect the world from the sorrow in her eyes. Yet for all the speculation, no one knew the truth. On the outskirts of the village stood her mansion, a crumbling relic wrapped in ivy and memory. Its tall windows were like sightless eyes, its iron gates forever half open, as if welcoming and warning in the same breath. The garden had long since surrendered to wildness. Pale flowers bloomed among tangled vines, and a fountain at its center sang softly though no water ever seemed to fill its basin. The villagers avoided the place, but they spoke of it often. From behind the veil, she watched the world. She saw the baker rise before dawn, dusting his hands with flour as he sang to himself. She saw lovers meet beneath the old oak tree at the edge of the square, their promises drifting into the evening air like fireflies. She saw old men playing chess on a bench worn smooth by time, arguing over moves they had made 100 times before. She saw everything. And though she remained apart, there was an undeniable allure to her mysterious presence, as if she carried with her the echo of a story that had not yet been told. Years passed in this quiet balance of distance and fascination, until the night the storm came. It rose without warning. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing through the forest and bending the trees until their branches clawed at the sky. Rain fell in wild, slanting sheets, turning the paths into rivers of mud. Lightning split the heavens again and again, each flash revealing the village in stark, trembling light. On that night, a young boy named Thomas found himself alone on the road that led to the edge of the forest. He had not meant to wander so far. He had been chasing a paper boat along the stream, laughing as it spun and dipped in the current, until the sky darkened and the first thunder rolled across the hills. By the time he turned back, the path had vanished beneath the rain. Fear pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat. He ran without direction, his small shoes slipping on wet stones, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The storm swallowed every familiar landmark. The village lights were gone. The trees loomed like giants. Then, through the curtain of rain, he saw it. The mansion. Its windows glowed faintly, a warm and steady light in the chaos of the storm. Thomas hesitated only a moment before running toward it. The iron gate groaned as he pushed it open. The garden seemed to lean around him, the flowers pale and luminous in the lightning's glare. By the time he reached the door, he was soaked to the bone, his hands trembling as he lifted them to knock. The sound was almost lost in the thunder. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door creaked open. The air inside was warm and carried the scent of candles and old books. The storm's fury seemed to pause at the threshold, as though it could not cross into that space. And there, standing in the flickering golden light, was the veiled lady. Up close, she seemed taller than he had imagined, her presence filling the room not with fear, but with a strange and gentle gravity. The veil moved softly, as if stirred by a breeze that did not exist. Thomas forgot the storm. He forgot the cold. She lifted one hand and beckoned him inside. Her voice, when she spoke, was like a melody that had waited a long time to be heard. "You are far from home," she said. He nodded, unable to find his own voice. She led him through halls lined with portraits whose eyes seemed alive with memory. The floors were polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the candlelight in endless patterns. Shelves overflowed with books, their spines marked with symbols he did not recognize. He felt as though he had stepped into a dream. They sat by a fire that burned without smoke. At first, he spoke little. But the veiled lady asked him gentle questions, and slowly the words came. He told her about the stream and the paper boat, about his mother's garden and the way the village bells sounded at noon. She listened as though each detail were a treasure. Then she began to speak. She told him of deserts where the sand sang beneath the moon, of cities carved into cliffs that glowed like embers at dusk, of forests where the leaves turned silver when night fell. She spoke of stars that fell into the sea and became living creatures of light, of rivers that flowed backward in lands where time had forgotten its path. Her words painted worlds inside his mind. Hours passed unnoticed. The storm raged on, but within the mansion there was only warmth and the quiet rhythm of two voices weaving a tapestry of stories. Thomas felt no fear. He felt as though he had known her forever. At last, the darkness began to soften. The first pale light of dawn slipped through the tall windows, touching the floor in long, fragile lines. Thomas's heart tightened. He knew he had to leave. The veiled lady walked with him to the door. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Will I see you again?" he asked. She reached out and placed something in his hand. It was a small key, silver and warm, its surface etched with a pattern that seemed to shift when he looked at it. "When the time is right," she said. He stepped out into the morning. The storm had passed. The world was washed clean and bright. When he turned back, the mansion's windows were dark. Years unfolded like the turning pages of a book. Thomas grew into a man. He left the village and traveled far, driven by a restless longing he could never fully name. He crossed oceans and climbed mountains. He walked through cities whose towers vanished into clouds and deserts where the horizon burned. Everywhere he went, he searched for her. He carried the silver key on a chain around his neck. In moments of doubt, he would hold it and remember the warmth of the fire, the sound of her voice, the feeling of stepping into a world beyond his wildest dreams. He returned to the village often. The mansion stood as it always had, silent and watching. But its doors never opened. The villagers still spoke of the veiled lady in hushed tones. Some claimed they had seen her walking in the forest at twilight. Others said she had never existed at all, that she was only a story told to frighten children. Thomas never argued. He knew the truth lived somewhere beyond proof. Time moved on. The village changed. The old oak tree fell in a storm. New houses rose where fields had once been. Faces he had known since childhood grew old and disappeared. But the memory of that night remained untouched. One evening, many years later, when the sky was heavy with stars and the air carried the scent of rain, Thomas walked once more to the edge of the forest. The key lay against his chest, warm as it had been on the night she gave it to him. The mansion stood before him, its windows dark. For the first time, he felt no uncertainty. He walked to the door and lifted the key. It slid into the lock as though it had always belonged there. The door opened. Inside, the candles were already burning. And at the far end of the hall, standing in the golden light, was the veiled lady. She had not changed. Or perhaps she had changed in ways that had nothing to do with time. You have returned, she said. Her voice was the same melody, the same promise. Thomas stepped forward, and in that moment he understood that the years of searching had never been about finding her. They had been about becoming the person who could walk through that door again. The veil shimmered. For the first time, she lifted her hands and drew it back. Her face was not the face of a sorceress or a princess. It was a face he had seen in 1,000 reflections, in dreams and in moments of quiet recognition. It was the face of every story he had ever followed, every path he had ever taken. It was the face of the mystery that lives at the heart of all things. And as the candles burned and the night deepened, the mansion seemed to expand around them, its walls dissolving into a vast and endless horizon of stars. In the village, far away and yet impossibly close, the wind moved through the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of a melody. Some said it was only the sound of the night. Others said it was the veiled lady walking once more among the shadows. But in the quiet moments, when the world was cloaked in darkness and the sky shimmered with distant light, there were those who felt a strange sense of wonder, as if a door had opened somewhere just beyond their sight. And if they listened very carefully, they could almost hear two voices speaking by a fire that never burned out, sharing stories that had no beginning and would never end. A timeless enigma, forever shrouded in mystery.